Mist clings to the emerald slopes of the reserve as the first light cuts through the canopy. Kian's boots sink softly into the damp earth, each step releasing the scent of moss and rain. He moves quietly, his breath misting in the cool air, eyes scanning for the one creature he's dreamed of seeing up close. His father, a seasoned park ranger, walks ahead, rifle slung over his shoulder, radio clipped to his vest. But Kian lingers. Something pulls him from the trail, a faint rustle, the snap of a twig. He slips away from his father's line of sight, brushing past ferns taller than his head. The air grows still. Then, in the center of a small clearing, he sees him, Moyo. The legendary silverback, massive and calm, sits among a patch of wild ginger. His dark, intelligent eyes lift from the stalks he's stripping with his fingers. For a moment, time hangs suspended. The jungle seems to hold its breath. Kian doesn't move. His heart thunders, but it's not fear, it's awe. He's heard stories from his father, seen grainy photos from motion-triggered cameras, but nothing could prepare him for this. Moyo is bigger than Kian imagined, shoulders like boulders, the silver sheen of his back catching in the shafts of sunlight. Moyo tilts his head, studying the boy. No aggression, no rush to flee, just steady, quiet curiosity. Kian's lips part in a silent hello. His father's voice calls faintly in the distance, but Kian doesn't answer. His feet feel rooted to the earth, as if any sudden movement might shatter the moment. The gorilla lowers his gaze and pulls another stem into his hands, peeling it with slow, deliberate strength. A bird trills overhead. Somewhere far off, a branch snaps. But here, in this clearing, there is only stillness. Then Moyo shifts, rising onto his knuckles. The sheer size of him sends a shiver up Kian's spine. He takes one careful step forward. Moyo doesn't retreat. Instead, he huffs softly, a sound almost like acknowledgement, before turning toward the deeper forest. Kian exhales a breath he didn't realize he was holding. The silverback pauses once more, glancing back over his shoulder, eyes meeting the boy's for one final heartbeat. Then he melts into the green shadows, leaving Kian alone in the hush of the morning. He doesn't know it yet, but this is the beginning, and by day's end, he will be forced to stand between this gorilla and the deadliest threat in the jungle. The air shifts. A sharp pop cracks through the stillness, rolling across the treetops like a distant storm. Kian freezes mid-step. That wasn't thunder. Another pop, then two more, faster this time. Gunfire. Birds explode from the canopy, their wings thrashing the air. Moyo's head snaps up. The silverback grunts low, a deep sound that vibrates through the ground. His eyes dart toward the noise. He knows what it means. Kian's stomach knots. His father's warnings echo in his mind. If you ever hear that sound, hide. Don't run, don't speak. But hiding isn't what his feet want to do. The underbrush rustles ahead. 3 figures burst through the green, men in mud-stained boots, rifles slung forward, eyes locked on Moyo. Their faces are shadowed under wide-brimmed hats, but their intent is clear. Poachers. One raises his weapon, finger curling around the trigger. Kian's breath catches. Before he can think, he's moving, bursting from the brush, stumbling into the open, his arms spread wide as he plants himself between the men and the silverback. "Stop!" His voice cracks, high with fear but loud enough to cut through the jungle noise. The leader barks something in a language Kian only half understands, waving for him to move aside. The muzzle of his rifle dips, then lifts again, aiming past the boy's shoulder. Kian shakes his head. "No, you can't." His voice trembles, but his feet dig into the soil. His heart slams against his ribs so hard he thinks they might crack. Behind him, Moyo lets out a low rumble, the kind that prickles the skin and makes the air feel heavy. The poachers hesitate. Even armed, they know the power of a charging silverback, but greed keeps their fingers near the triggers. Another man steps forward, cursing. He reaches out and grabs Kian's arm, trying to yank him aside. The boy jerks back, nearly losing his balance, but plants himself again in front of Moyo. The leader glances at his companions. His jaw tightens. The decision is coming: force the boy aside or fire anyway. Kian's mind is screaming at him to run, but he doesn't move. Not when the gorilla's life hangs on the line. Not when those dark, intelligent eyes are watching him. And then another sound, faint at first, then growing. The distant roar of an engine cutting through the gun-smoke air. The poachers hear it too. Their heads snap toward the trees, unease flashing across their faces. But they're not gone yet, and the rifles are still aimed. By the time the Rangers arrive, this standoff could be over, one way or another. The jungle holds its breath. Kian can feel the man's fingers digging into his arm, the hot metallic scent of gun oil sharp in the air. One of the poachers raises his rifle higher, sight fixed on Moyo. A deafening crack splits the air, another gunshot, but this one isn't aimed at the silverback. The bullet whistles into the canopy, scattering a cloud of startled birds. A warning. The leader snarls something to his men, jerking his head toward Kian as if to shove him aside. And then Moyo moves. It happens in a blur, 400 pounds of muscle exploding forward. His roar is a sound pulled from the very bones of the earth, shaking Kian to the core. Leaves shudder, the ground trembles under the thunder of his knuckles, pounding the soil. Kian stumbles back, certain the gorilla will plow straight through him. But Moyo doesn't. He stops beside the boy, towering above him like a living wall. One massive arm braces in front of Kian, the other curling slightly toward his side, a clear, unspoken message. This one is mine to protect. The poachers falter. Even through their bravado, the sight is unnerving, a wild animal shielding a human child. One man mutters under his breath, taking half a step back. Moyo huffs, his breath hot against Kian's ear. The boy can hear his own pulse, frantic and loud, as he realizes the silverback isn't just standing there, he's watching the rifles, shifting slightly each time one angles closer. Then, through the tension, a new sound cuts in, low at first, then louder, an engine, grinding over roots and stones, growing fast. The leader spits in frustration, motioning for his men to spread out. But Moyo takes a slow step forward, forcing them back with nothing but his sheer size and the warning in his gaze. The growl of the engine swells until it's almost on top of them. From beyond the trees, voices shout, urgent, commanding. The poachers exchange a look. Their window is closing. One last glance at the gorilla, one last look at the boy in his shadow, and they start to retreat into the brush. But the rifles never drop from their hands. Kian doesn't move until they're swallowed by the green. Only then does his breath rush out in a shudder. Moyo's eyes meet his for a single, loaded second, something ancient and knowing in them, before turning toward the sound of the approaching Rangers. He doesn't run, not yet. What happens next will prove this was no random act of protection. Branches whip aside as a camouflage truck bursts into the clearing, brakes squealing. Rangers leap out before the wheels stop spinning, rifles raised but eyes wide at the sight before them, a boy standing beneath the shadow of a silverback gorilla. "Kian!" His father's voice is raw, breaking as he sprints forward. He skids to a halt just a few feet away, torn between grabbing his son and not provoking the massive animal looming over him. Moyo doesn't flinch. His dark eyes stay locked on the tree line where the poachers vanished. A low rumble still thrums in his chest, a warning that he's not done protecting this ground. Kian's father takes a slow step closer. "It's okay, son. Come to me." Kian glances up at Moyo. The silverback's hand shifts, knuckles pressing gently into the soil in front of the boy, not blocking him, just steady, like a guard who won't turn his back. The head ranger, a broad-shouldered man named Bako, murmurs, "I've never seen anything like it." His voice carries the weight of 20 years in the field, and still he sounds awed. Slowly, carefully, Kian edges toward his father. Moyo watches but doesn't follow. When the boy is safely in his father's arms, the gorilla exhales a deep huff and straightens to his full height. For a moment it seems he'll disappear into the jungle without another glance. But then Moyo steps forward. His massive hand reaches out, fingers brushing Kian's shoulder with surprising gentleness. It's not a shove, it's acknowledgement. Gasps ripple through the rangers. Bako swallows hard. "You know who he is, don't you?" he murmurs toward the gorilla, almost to himself. Kian's father turns sharply. "What are you talking about?" Bako's eyes don't leave Moyo. "Years ago there was another boy, your brother, wasn't it, who tried to protect Moyo's troop when the hunters came. He stood his ground, just like this one." Kian's father stiffens. "That was before Kian was born." "And Moyo was there," Bako says quietly. "He remembers." The words hang heavy in the humid air. Kian stares at the silverback, a shiver running down his spine, not from fear, but from the realization that this wasn't chance. Moyo gives a final glance toward the boy and the man holding him. Then, without a sound, he melts into the shadows between the trees, leaving only the faint sway of branches in his wake. No one speaks for several seconds. The jungle's normal noise slowly creeps back in, birdsong, the whine of insects, the rustle of leaves. But to Kian, the clearing still feels charged, as if something ancient has just passed through him, leaving its mark forever. The story doesn't stay in the jungle for long. By the next morning, footage from a ranger's body camera is already circulating online, grainy images of a boy standing beneath the shadow of a massive silverback, the gorilla's arm angled protectively in front of him. The clip racks up millions of views in hours. Headlines scream about the boy and the gorilla, and donations to anti-poaching programs pour in from every corner of the globe. For Kian, the whirlwind feels unreal. He's back in the village with his father, safe, yet his mind drifts constantly to the clearing. To the moment Moyo's hand rested on his shoulder, not as a threat, but as recognition. The reserve changes too. Patrol routes double. New fencing goes up in vulnerable areas. And the rangers start carrying tranquilizer rifles alongside their standard gear, not to harm, but to protect creatures like Moyo from those who would. Weeks pass before Kian sees the silverback again. It's early evening, the sun sinking low, the air rich with the smell of rain-soaked earth. Kian is walking a patrol trail with his father when a ripple of movement in the trees catches his eye. Moyo steps into the open. He doesn't approach right away. Instead, he watches from a few paces off, his gaze steady, unafraid. Then, with the slow deliberation of someone who knows they're safe, he closes the distance and lowers himself to the ground beside the boy. They sit in silence. No words, no gestures, just the shared warmth of two beings who understand more than they could ever explain. Kian's father stands a respectful distance away, camera forgotten in his hand. He knows this isn't a moment to capture, it's one to witness. When Moyo finally rises, it's with a quiet huff, a glance that lingers just long enough to say, "I remember." Then he disappears once more into the deep green, his silver back glinting briefly before the shadows swallow him. Kian watches until the last rustle fades. He doesn't feel sad this time. He feels certain that their paths will cross again, certain that what happened in that clearing has changed both of them, and certain that no matter what the future holds, he will never stop protecting the wild because now the wild has protected him. Kian's story is more than a moment of courage. It's proof that the bond between humans and animals can run deeper than we imagine. In a single heartbeat, a boy risked everything to protect a creature most would fear, and that creature, in turn, chose to protect him. Moments like this remind us what's at stake. Every endangered life matters. Every choice to stand up for them counts. And sometimes, the smallest voice in the jungle can make the loudest difference. If this story moved you, don't let it end here. Share it, talk about it, and help raise awareness for wildlife protection. And if you believe courage comes in all sizes, hit that like button, subscribe for more unbelievable true animal stories, and let us know in the comments. would you have done what Kian did? Because one day it might be your voice that stands between danger and the wild.